here of how intricate this was and how much rock and stone they had removed. Here's a color photograph or a picture, and then here's some photographs from the inside. It's just mind-blowing, and this is just a huge multi-level complex that they built, and they built their homes in these natural rock formations that you'll see here, and they built their homes, and then they built this complex underneath. And so I started to think, is this kind of where people got the whole hollow earth concept from? And as I was researching the Hyperboreans and this location here, I zoomed in on this island. And just to note that they named this Constantine Point here, and then they also named this Constantine Valley. And I immediately thought of the Cairo symbol, which I'll just look up for you real quick. So in case you're not familiar with the Cairo symbol, this is the Cairo symbol here. It's a very ancient symbol. Christians maintain that it represents Christ. However, I don't think they understand what Christ truly is. And if we look at this, I believe this to be the representation of the Cairo. And this, you could even make the argument, you have the crossings, and then you have almost like a P here. It's really unbelievable. And anyways, I just found that very fascinating that they named this after Constantine. And if I started looking at this island, and one of the descriptions of the Hyperborea was that they had an island no smaller than Sicily. And I was looking at this, I noticed the Constantine significance here, and I started looking into this Amchitka Island, okay? Now, the people of Amchitka Island and the Alaskan Peninsula and the Aleutian Islands, this is what they called themselves, the Unangan. And when you look at what the Unangan actually means, it means they were calling themselves the original people. They were called the Aleuts, but they called themselves the Unangan, meaning seasider. But it also meant the original people. Now the Unangan, they lived in underground huts. Okay? Now, if you're familiar with the Hyperborean mythology, these people were supposedly living inside of the hollow earth. And I showed you during Kuyu and how elaborate that this can get. The Urungan were, in order to live in a cold environment, they lived in these huts that were underground, and they have a small hole to allow fire to escape or smoke to escape. Now, there's also claims that there is a pyramid, an underground pyramid, located in Alaska. Not only that, the Alaskan people mummified their bodies, and they would wrap them in a whale skin, and they would be perfectly preserved. I saw a documentary on it, and they were more well preserved in such a wet environment, and more well mummified than the Egyptians ever did. And you find these evidences of mummies coming from the north. You find the Etruscans mummified, the Scythians mummified. You find these mummies everywhere. And when you look into the fact that these people are calling themselves the original people, and you find this amazing culture had spread downwards. It's really quite amazing. However, they're claiming that there is a pyramid, an underground pyramid, that these people had built. And they're showing this anomalous feature here in Alaska, just west of Mount McKinley. And here you can see some pictures, but it's very interesting. I recommend you guys take a look and check it out. Very interesting information. However, I'm not here to prove that these pyramids are there. However, I wanted to talk about the facts that this was a central hub, and that this island here may have been a very important island to the trade. And I say that because I started looking at this island. Okay, I'm going to zoom in. And what you'll notice is some very strange anomalies on the island. And I thought, man, that's really weird what they've got here. And so I started doing some research, and I found a Wikipedia article on Amchitka. Well, it turns out that on this island, they decided to choose this island, the United States government decided to detonate underground explosions on this island. And this is actually how the group Greenpeace started, was in protests of these underground explosions. Now, if you're familiar with my other videos and the 33rd parallel, you'll know that many of the nuclear explosions, or all the nuclear explosions by the United States, have taken a place on the 33rd parallel. They chose the Nevada location, which lied right on the 33rd parallel, and then even the dropping of the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were less than a degree off the 33rd parallel in Japan. Now we have another connection where this intersection, they're detonating underground atomic explosions on Constantine Point. And I believe that not only did they do these explosions as a symbolic event, just as they did with the 33rd parallel, but they triggered these explosions to cover up evidence of the ancient trading routes that may still be hidden underground, or these civilizations themselves may have still been there. But when we look at the capabilities of man and what they did in this Daring Kuyu, there's no doubt in my mind that they could have done this at Amchitka. And that our government, after World War II, became interested in detonating explosions here. At first, they wanted to do above-ground explosions. Then they decided to move the detonation to Nevada. However, they then later came back in the 70s or 60s, and they wanted to and then they went and followed through with the underground explosions. Now, I don't know if their interest came about due to the interests of Hitler and how the Nazis were searching for these polar beings and how they were actually going down to Antarctica. There was actually a military conflict in Antarctica where the United States actually sent military troops down to confront the Nazis. And I don't know to what extent they knew of this information. I don't know if they knew of it beforehand or afterwards, after interrogations, and then became interested in this and wanted to destroy the evidence of it due to the threat. If you look at archaeology, everything or anthropology, everything is designed to make us feel like everything had come from Africa, and our civilization had come from Africa. However, there's a lot of evidence suggesting otherwise. There's a lot of genetic evidence suggesting that man had interbred with Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon and had created a giant race, and that things aren't as clean as they'd like you to believe. And they'd like you to believe that the Neanderthal race had died out 25,000 years ago. However, things aren't that simple. There are going to be interbreedings. There's going to be rapes. Rape is a form that, is as terrible as it is a form of a species, a desperation of a species to continue on, or an individual. And rapes did happen back then. There's no doubt they happened, and that Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon, even as repulsing as they may have been to a modern human, had interbred and created a giant race, and created a race that it doesn't want to be discussed by mainstream science. So I feel like this is a very important area, and that they have destroyed something here with those underground detonations. Now, if we follow this line, you'll notice it takes us right through the eye of Lake Superior. And these were where the copper mines were, the ancient copper mines. And there's something very significant and special about these mines, and that is they create the most pure. They are the most pure copper mines in the world. There is no copper like it anywhere. Okay, they're 90. I've read 97% pure, 99.5% pure. It's unbelievable. And so, if we go on to the copper mines, you can learn about it here. And how they say the Native Americans were mining this copper, and some people estimate that 1.5 billion tons of copper were removed from these mines. And you see it here in the Keweenaw Peninsula, and here we see that this is large-scale, economical, recoverable, 97% pure native copper is found. And this is the only place in the world, here and in Isle Royale, where this copper is found to this level of purity. Now, if you look, well, guess what? Our line that they decided to place Washington, D.C. through cuts right through this peninsula and comes right to where a port of the Isle Royale would be, and then comes and continues through. So I'm suggesting that there was a trade path here and a trade path here where they came through, and either they came through and then they sailed the Great Lakes and came through down the Mississippi. And we see, even with the problems in the currents in this area, this line here comes through the direct path of how they would have to come underneath Cuba to enter. So we see a grand intelligence here behind these lines, and that it also comes through the thinnest point where they would want to make a land trekking to come over to the other side of the ocean.